Take a soft breath in and let it go like morning fog slipping down a hillside. You're safe now. Your day is behind you. Feel your body grow lighter, like the air at the top of the world, where clouds are not above you, but around you. Let us begin. Our story today begins high in the Cordillera Mountains of the Philippines, where the air is thin, the mosses glow silver with dew, and the sky feels close enough to touch. Here rises Pulag, sacred, cloud-veiled, and old. The locals call her the playground of the gods, for when the sun rises through her morning mist, it spills gold upon the grasslands and paints the clouds with the breath of dreams. It's in this world, just above the world, that a boy named Tala wandered. He was not like the other boys from the villages below, where they played with sticks and climbed mango trees. Tala climbed ridgelines. Where they fetched water, he fetched fog and cupped palms. And while others feared the clouds that curled down the trail like smoke, Tala walked into them. He believed the clouds had a language, not words, but weight. Some clouds, he said, drifted low with sadness. Some hovered high sharp with memory. Some spilled too early, like secrets whispered too soon. His grandmother, Ina Salome, would shake her head when he spoke this way, but she never scolded him. You see, Ina Salome was old enough to remember the times before, when the mountains still kept shepherds, those who could guide the wind, fold the mists, and carry stories through the clouds. She would whisper to Tala when they sat by her hearth, "There used to be watchers, my boy, men and women who read the sky like woven cloth. When they passed, the mountain kept their breath." Asterisk, Tala always listened, eyes wide, breath still. And so he grew, walking each day higher and higher up the mossy slopes. He'd spend hours lying in the grassland near the summit, watching the sea of clouds roll beneath him like tides over the spine of the earth. One morning, before the birds even began to stretch their wings, Tala woke to a sound. It wasn't a bird, not a branch, not the chime of cowbells from grazing goats. It was softer than that, like someone breathing through a flute made of mist. He sat up. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was pale with anticipation. The sound came again. This time he followed. Through dwarf bamboo and cloud-buried trail, his bare feet touched dew-cold rock. And then, between two stones where no path had ever shown itself before, a staircase appeared. Stone, worn smooth. Leading not up, but through. The clouds parted just enough for him to see. And at the base of the steps stood a woman. She wore a robe woven of sky-colored threads. Her hair was tied back with a ribbon of wind. And her eyes, they held the kind of stillness that only those who watch stars fall without blinking could know. She looked at Tala, and though her mouth did not move, he heard her clearly. "You've walked the breath of Pulag long enough. It is time you learn to fold the clouds." He took a step forward. Then another, not afraid, not quite awake, but not dreaming either. The mountain was shifting around him, not with tremor or quake, but with welcome. The stones seemed to hum. The mists curled gently around his legs like familiar hands. And in the air, a scent he had never known, but somehow remembered, burnt pine resin, old woven cloth, and something like rain before it falls. As he passed the woman, the clouds folded shut behind him, and the world he entered was softer than sleep. Tala followed the woman into the cloud-wrapped stairwell, though there were no walls, only mist, held in perfect stillness. The steps beneath his feet did not echo, but something else did. Every breath he took seemed to answer back. He would inhale, and the wind would soften. He would exhale, and a tiny swirl of mist would dance at his feet. The woman walked ahead of him, never once turning, yet somehow he knew she was listening to every breath, every heartbeat. After what felt like neither long nor short, just enough, they reached a clearing, but not one made by stone or axe. This space was carved by stillness, and there, Rising from the center of the cloud-ringed circle stood a single pole of polished wood. Wrapped around it, hundreds of wind chimes, each different in shape and tone. Some were made of bone, some of shell, some of hollow bamboo, etched with tiny runes too small to read. The woman turned. Her voice, now audible in the air rather than the heart, was as soft as a lullaby spoken in fog. This is the post of windsong. Each shepherd places one chime before they return to mist. She stepped aside, and Tala noticed there was one chime missing. A ribbon fluttered where it had once hung sky blue, frayed at the end. The woman nodded to it. My mother's chime. Lost in a storm no shepherd could calm. Tala stepped forward and something inside him trembled, not from fear, but recognition. As he moved closer, the chimes began to ring, not loudly, but in agreement. Soft tones, some like rain tapping on wood, others like the breath of ocarinas buried in clay. They were speaking, not to him. About him, the woman watched. Her eyes did not glow, but they carried light all the same. You hear them, don't you? Tala nodded. I don't know what they say, but I feel it. The woman smiled. Then you've already begun. She reached into her robe and drew out a satchel. Inside, a folded square of cloud cloth and a single needle carved from bone. She offered them to Tala. Before you can shepherd the sky, you must weave a mat for your feet. A sash of memory. Wind will not follow a stranger. Tala took the cloth. It was impossibly light, yet it held weight like a promise. He sat at the edge of the clearing, and as the woman vanished into the mist once more, the chimes whispered behind her. Tala threaded the needle and began to stitch, not with thread, but with strands pulled from the very mist around him. Tala bent over the square of cloth, knees nestled into the dew-soft grass of the clearing. Around him, the chimes had stilled, not silent, but watching. The thread did not come from spools. It came from mist. When his fingers hovered over the fog, it drew upward in fine silver filaments, light as spider webs, soft as memory. With the bone needle, he wove. And though he had never stitched before, his hands knew what to do. Each motion was slow, careful, guided not by skill, but by feeling. He stitched the curve of the ridgeline where he first saw the clouds fall. He stitched the old mango tree outside his grandmother's hut, the one with the hollow trunk and the faint smell of beeswax. He stitched the bell his mother used to call him for supper. And then he stitched things he didn't remember living, but knew, a Huron gliding low over the mountain ridge, a cave shaped like a sleeping face, a drum circle lit by fire that smelled of pine and earth and rain. Each stitch pulsed softly when finished, glimmering briefly, then settling into the fabric like breath exhaled and forgotten. Hours passed. Or maybe none at all. The sky did not move here in this place. There was no sun. Only a gentle shift in light, as if the world were dimming a lantern just enough to invite sleep. When the final thread curled into place, the cloth stretched itself wide, no longer a sash. Now a robe. Tala held it to his chest. The chimes rang out softly in approval. He slid his arms into the cloud sleeves and felt the weightlessness press into his bones. Not heavy, but anchoring. Like being known by something older than memory. And just then, a second presence stirred behind him. Not the woman, another figure. Tala turned. It was a man, tall and wrapped in a robe stitched with feathers and stone-shaped beads. His beard shimmered like frost. In his hand, a staff carved with cloud spirals and togged with a bell no larger than a thumb. He bowed. Tala stood, unsure if he should speak. But the man raised a hand and said gently, "You've woven silence well. Now, walk it." He pointed toward a path that hadn't been there moments before. It led up cut through a tunnel of light mist, flanked by tall reeds that whispered even without wind. The robe around Tala shimmered once, and his feet, there still, moved without fear. With each step, the reeds leaned in and brushed his robe, and each touch told him something. A whisper from a storm that passed 1,000 years ago. A name spoken by a grandmother he never met. The sound of rain falling inside a sealed jar. He walked, and the mountain walked with him. And somewhere deep beneath his ribs, he began to hum. The path curled upward now, but the slope did not strain his legs. Tala's robe swayed softly behind him, trailing fog and gentle threads like streamers of breath. The humming in his chest wasn't a tune he recognized, yet it soothed him, its rhythm matching his heartbeat. His footsteps, and even the subtle rustle of reeds lining the cloudlit trail, each note summoned something, and the path responded. A soft wind rose, not from behind, but within the trees. The reeds bowed low, not in resistance, but in reverence. Tala paused only once when he heard it, a second voice, humming too. Not behind him, beside him. He turned and saw a shadow. A girl, his age, clothed in a sash of plum-colored mist. Her eyes were closed, but she walked as though she knew the ground by memory. Their hums aligned, not perfectly, but kindly, each note braided into the other, no competition, no urgency, just harmony. They walked in silence now, two voices tethered by vibration. The trail opened at last into a clearing circled by stones. At the center stood a basin carved from a single black rock. It held water, but not still. It moved ripples crossing its surface, even though there was no wind. The girl knelt and cupped her hands into the basin. She offered the water to the sky, and it rose. Yes, rose. It lifted like steam from her palms and curled into the shape of a bird. The bird shimmered, paused, and then flew upward into the clouds, vanishing without a sound. Tala stepped closer. The humming returned, this time from the stones themselves, low, soothing, like drums beneath a blanket. He knelt and cupped water too. His hands trembled slightly, but the robe around him tightened at the shoulders in embrace. He lifted the water and breathed onto it. The mist in his palms trembled, then gathered, then spun. It didn't become a bird. It became a bell, small, spun of fog and light. It chimed once clear and gentle, and then dissolved. The girl opened her eyes. She smiled. "You'll be able to call rain one day?" Tal smiled back. He did not ask how she knew. The stones around the basin grew warm beneath them, not hot, just warm enough to say, "You are seen. You are safe." Then the wind rose again, from above, not cold, not loud, just curious, and it spoke without words. "Walk further." So they stood, Tala and the girl, and stepped into the next bend of cloud, where lanterns blinked like fireflies waiting to remember. Tala and the girl stepped together into the fog beyond the basin. This part of the mountain was different. Not colder, not darker, just quieter. The air here didn't move as much. It held its breath. And yet, above them, dozens, no, hundreds of lanterns floated. They were not tied to anything, not trees, not poles. They simply hovered in the stillness, their golden light pulsing slowly like sleeping fireflies. Some glowed warm and amber. Others flickered with a bluish-white haze. And a few, just a few, burned soft green, like dew on pine needles. Tala looked up in awe. Why are they floating? The girl beside him spoke without breaking her stride. Their dreams not yet returned. The mountain holds them until someone can carry them back. He blinked. Carry back? To who? She smiled. To whoever forgot them. They walked beneath the floating lights, and with each step, the glow shifted ever so slightly. Tala could feel it in his chest's tiny pulses, like questions brushing his skin. One lantern drifted low. It hovered just beside his shoulder. He turned to it gently. Its light was faint, flickering like a memory just out of reach. Without thinking, he reached out and placed his hand beneath it. The lantern dropped softly into his palm. It didn't burn. It didn't buzz. It simply settled there, warm, weightless, and alive. A vision flickered inside it. A woman kneeling on a woven mat, humming a lullaby to an infant wrapped in indigo cloth. The melody was soft, tender. Tala didn't recognize the woman or the baby, but the hum. He knew it. It was the one he had whispered unknowingly as he climbed the trail earlier that day. The lantern pulsed once, then floated gently upward again, leaving a faint shimmer on his fingertips. The girl beside him said nothing, only reached up and touched a blue lantern of her own. It hovered close to her cheek. Her eyes shimmered with tears she didn't release. And then she whispered, "This one belonged to my father." He never sang, but he always listened. Her voice trembled on that last word. Tala wanted to ask more, but something about the grove told him. Listening was more powerful than questioning here. So they walked, hands occasionally reaching out, lanterns occasionally responding. Some danced near their shoulders like pets greeting old friends. Others remained far above, waiting for the right moment, or perhaps the right person. As they neared the heart of the grove, the lanterns grew brighter, and from their center rose a great tree, not tall, but wide and gnarled, its branches twisted into patterns like woven stories. In its hollows, lanterns nested, not hung, not placed, nested as if grown from the wood itself. The girl touched the bark and whispered, "This is the keeper tree. If your lantern rests here, it has no more wandering left to do." Tala approached and saw an empty branch, the same shape as the lantern he had held. And though his hands were now empty, something rose from his chest, soft and glowing. A light without shape. It floated to the branch and gently settled there. The tree pulsed, and so did the lanterns above. And somewhere in the woods beyond the mist, a lullaby was sung by a mother who hadn't remembered it in years. The lantern grove faded behind them like a dream after waking, still present, but no longer calling. Tala and the girl moved forward along a new trail, one that didn't begin with stone or earth, but with sound. Beneath their feet, the ground was soft, grassy, lush, but with every step they took, a tone rang out from below. Not loud, just enough to notice. A hum here, a chime there, soft rings like glass tapped by feather. Tala paused and looked down. The grass swayed gently, even without wind, and beneath it, faintly glinting through the blades, were bells. Small ones, round, some made of bronze, others of carved jade, a few of old bone wrapped in twine. He knelt, pushed the grass apart with careful fingers, and there was just one, simple, silent, until he brushed it. Ding. A clear note rose into the air and melted into silence. The girl crouched beside him. Beneath Pulag, they say the bells keep the balance. Each one holds a memory. Each one rings when someone close to that memory steps near. Tala blinked. So these are mine? Some might be. Some belong to people who never walked this path, but whose stories are ready to be heard. She reached out and rang another. This one gave off a softer tone, less of a ring, more of a sigh. In that moment, the mist to their left shimmered, and in it, a vision appeared. A man in a straw hat, holding a wooden flute. He sat beneath a mango tree, staring at the mountain's peak, his eyes full of something unsaid. Tala's heart ached. He didn't know why, but he knew this man had waited for something that never came. The girl spoke, almost whispering, "When the bells ring, they open echoes, but only those ready to receive them can keep them from fading." As the vision dissolved, the air grew warmer. Not hot, just full, thicker, like breath before a storm. The bells around them began to chime faintly, gently, as though stirred by unseen footsteps. One at a time, then more, then many. Soon, the trail beneath them was singing, dozens of notes in soft harmony, not chaotic, not eerie, loving, It was the music of long-forgotten things returning to light. Tala looked to the girl. Are we supposed to do something? She nodded once. Listen. So they stood still, not moving, not speaking, only listening. The bells whispered stories of harvest feasts under starlight, of children chasing fireflies, of hands wringing rainwater from laundry while humming an old folk tune. Moments, not grand, not legendary, but precious. The mountain was remembering, and in return, they remembered with it. When the bells finally settled, the mist ahead cleared, revealing a pond, still glass-like. At its center, a single island of moss, and upon it one bell, much larger than the rest. Wrapped in vines and feathers and thyme, the girl touched Tala's sleeve. That's the bell of return. When you ring it, the next path will open. Tala stepped forward. The bells behind him chimed once more, not goodbye, but go. Tala stepped slowly along the mossy edge of the pond, where each footfall pressed ripples into water that shimmered like silver silk. The pond reflected more than just clouds above. It mirrored time. He glimpsed his grandmother kneeling beside a hearth, a mango tree heavy with green fruit, a young boy himself dancing through rain barefoot and laughing. Each image faded with the next step. The girl followed close behind, her robe whispering with every movement, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. Ahead, the island waited, round, soft, and perfectly still like the palm of a giant hand, and at its center stood the bell. Tall as Tala's shoulders, shaped like an upside-down flower. Vines crept along its sides, but did not hide its shape. Someone long ago had etched symbols into its metal skin. Spirals, feathers, tiny mountain peaks, and eyes closed in sleep. He waded through the shallow water. It was cold, but not biting more, like first morning light brushing the skin. When he stepped onto the moss island, a soft chime rang out, not from the bell, but from beneath his feet, as if the island welcomed him. He stood before the great bell and reached out. It was warm. Not from sun, from use. This bell had been rung thousands of times, and every time had mattered. He found the rope frayed, thick, still strong. He took a breath and pulled. The bell rang out, low and deep, a sound that didn't echo, but sank. It sank into the pond, into the mountain, into his bones. The vibration was gentle but full, like being wrapped in a blanket of song. All around him, the mist stirred. Above the pond, the lanterns flickered once more. Then a pathway revealed itself across the water. Stone steps, once submerged, now surfaced in a line, not toward more mountain, but toward sky. The path sloped upward, not steeply, but endlessly, as though leading into the space between clouds and stars. Tala turned. The girl was still on the shore. She bowed deeply. I cannot walk that path with you, she said softly. Tala stepped back, unsure. But why? You rang the bell. You're ready. This next part is yours alone. He hesitated. The wind stirred the pond like a breath across a bowl of tea. Then he nodded. And she whispered, we'll meet again, if your thread returns to the loom. He smiled and turned. Each step on the stone path was silent, but not lonely. The higher he rose, the lighter his robe became, lifting slightly behind him, the cloud threads unraveling just enough to glow, and in his chest that gentle hum returned, familiar now, home now. Above him, the clouds parted once more, revealing a new horizon, not made of mountain, not of earth, but of sky, waiting to be walked. The path curved upward into a realm where the world no longer sounded like leaves or water, but like echoes, soft ones, the kind left behind by voices no longer speaking aloud. Tala walked slowly, carefully. The stones underfoot shimmered, not with reflection, but remembrance. Each one bore a symbol, some carved deep, Others faded by centuries of sky touch. Some had birds, others waves. One bore a simple pair of closed eyes, and each time he stepped on one, he felt something stir inside him, small pulses of recognition, as if pieces of himself lived in places he hadn't yet visited. The sky around him wasn't blue. It was a soft gray, tinged with lavender and pearl. Above him, great veils of mist floated like banners in slow procession, drifting past unseen windows. He was in a sky not meant for looking at, but for walking within. The robe he wore responded to every breeze now. It guided him, or maybe it followed him. He wasn't sure anymore which was which. Then the wind changed. It grew cooler, not harsh, but alert, and ahead the mist thinned. Through the veil he saw them. Figures, not many. 5, maybe 6. Each stood at the edge of a wide stone circle, hands clasped before them, robes of varied designs, each more intricate than the last. They were the shepherds, not stories, not memories, real. One stepped forward. A tall man with hair bound in silver thread. He didn't speak. He bowed. And when he rose, he whispered, "You've remembered enough to be remembered in return." Tala felt his heart flutter, not with fear, but recognition. The shepherd gestured to the circle. Tala stepped into it. The other shepherds raised their hands. The circle glowed. And above them, names appeared in the sky. Written not in letters, but in light, hundreds, thousands. Each one pulsed briefly, then faded. And another appeared, and then another. Until at last, one name held steady, his Tala. The sky whispered it, the mountain echoed it, and the shepherds spoke it together as if welcoming his story back into a book that had long been missing a page. The woman from before appeared beside him, not the girl, but the first, the one with wind in her ribbon. She smiled, placed her palm over his chest, and said, "The clouds have known you. Now the sky will too." Tala's robe shimmered fully now. The thread at his collar split and formed a new weave, a line of wind wrapping around a spiral, the mark of the skywalkers. And with it, the clouds lowered, inviting a rest, perhaps, or the beginning of his true journey. Tala closed his eyes and heard his name again, not from them, but from the wind itself. The circle of shepherds stepped back, their robes flowing like water caught in a patient breeze. And where they had stood, the floor beneath Tala shifted, not in sound or tremor, but in memory. The stone beneath his feet rippled with a faint hum, and slowly, gently, a stairway spiraled downward. It was made not of rock or wood, but of air. A spiral staircase sculpted by sound. Each step whispered as he placed his foot upon it, not words. Tones, soft notes that chimed only once, then faded into silence. Tala looked to the shepherds. No one stopped him. So he descended. With each step, the air grew warmer, not hot but cocooned, like the inside of a hollow gourd, or the moment just before a storm sings its first drop. At the base of the stair was a chamber round, wide, and filled with a dozen softly turning wind sculptures. They spun slowly. Some shaped like feathers, others like leaves, shells, ribbons. And in the center of the chamber stood an enormous conch shell, taller than Tala, its pale spiral pulsing faintly with light. He stepped closer. The air vibrated not threateningly, but like a deep yawn settling into silence. A shepherd's voice echoed behind him, though none were seen. "This is the chamber of hollow wind, where forgotten winds gather to find form once more." Tala reached out and touched the shell. A current rushed through him, not wind exactly, but memory and motion. His mind flooded. Images, sounds, scents. The smoke from his grandmother's hearth. The quiet hiss of rain against banana leaves. The breath of fog as it kissed the rice terraces. And a lullaby. The same one from the lantern, but now it had words, soft, almost whispered. Walk not to change the sky, but to let it know you listened. He stepped back. One of the wind sculptures stopped spinning, then shifted shape, turning slowly into a bird. Not a real one, something more. It flapped once, then vanished. The voice returned. You freed a current that once lost its shape. Each step you've taken, each breath, has lifted what lay forgotten. Tala turned. Another staircase appeared. This one coiled upward, made of woven threads of mist. Above it, a small bell floated. No clapper, just a shape, waiting. He began to climb. As he rose, the chamber dimmed behind him, the wind sculpture spinning slower now. As if content, at the top of the staircase, the bell hovered before his eyes. He reached out, and with a single breath, rang it. The tone that emerged wasn't heard with ears, but with memory. He saw again the girl beside the pond, the lantern in his palm, the vision in the mist, and the tree that nested dreams. All of it wove together, and then the path ahead opened, not to sky, not to forest, but to a garden softly glowing, hidden even from the mountain itself. Tala stepped through the opening, and the first thing he noticed wasn't the sight. It was the scent. The garden smelled of pine bark and blossoms, of river stones warmed by sun, and of something faintly sweet like tea brewed from distant thunder. The air here shimmered with color, though no single color stayed in place. Mosses blinked green, then gold. Petals sighed into blues and lilacs before settling back into dew. It wasn't a garden made of order. There were no neat rows or trimmed hedges, only wildness that welcomed. In the center stood a tree, shorter than the others Tala had seen, but fuller. Its trunk was carved with swirling lines, some shallow, others worn smooth from centuries of wind. He stepped closer and found that the tree was weeping. Not tears, but droplets of water, falling gently from its branches into a small stone bowl at its base. Each drop made a sound soft, distinct, ping dot 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 sip dot dot hum. The bowl never overflowed. The drops never hurried. Tala sat before it, listened, and slowly he began to understand. Each drop was a voice from a past rain. Some whispered lullabies, others told stories half-formed, as though waiting for someone to finish them. The garden leaned in. It was watching. No listening. Tala reached into the satchel at his side. He didn't remember when it had appeared there, inside a folded sash of cloth. His own, the first one he had stitched in the clearing so long ago. But now it was blank again. Only faint threads shimmered beneath the surface like an unwritten melody. A soft breeze brushed his shoulder, and with it came a voice, the girl's voice, not beside him, but within the garden. You've walked the sky, listened to bells, given shape to stories, now stitch the rain. Tala laid the cloth across his knees and raised his fingers. This time, he didn't pull thread from mist. He pulled it from sound. Each drop that touched the bowl shimmered briefly and became a thread in his hands. He stitched slowly, a child's laugh, a storm that arrived too soon but left just in time, a goodbye whispered over tea, a promise never spoken but always kept. The sash grew heavier, not burdensome, but real. When the last drop fell, the cloth pulsed in his hands. It was done, but not finished. The garden sighed, and with that breath, the petals shifted hue. The tree stopped weeping, and the bowl below began to glow from within its water, now holding shapes, stories, echoes. Tala stood, wrapped the sash around his shoulders, and the path opened once again, narrow, quiet, bathed in soft light. The garden faded behind him, its song now stitched into his step. The path that stretched ahead was quieter than any Tala had walked before, not silent, just expectant. The fog here no longer swirled. It hovered, still. The sash on his shoulder warmed faintly, as though responding to the hush. Ahead, the earth dipped gently into a hollow, circular, sunken, and at its center, something shimmered, It wasn't stone, not wood. It was made of air. A dome barely visible like breath caught in sunlight. Inside the dome stood a pedestal, and resting atop it, a wooden spindle carved with spirals and feathers. It turned slowly, not spun. Turned on its own. Tala stepped into the hollow, and the wind returned, not fierce, but full of presence. It brushed his face like a mother's hand, his ears filled with whispers familiar and strange, fragments of lullabies, snippets of words he had never spoken but somehow remembered. Each gust brought a memory, not his alone, but collected, held. The spindle spun faster now. The dome flickered softly, and a circle of feathers rose from the earth around him. Dozens, each shaped differently: eagle, kingfisher, owl, quail. They hovered in place, then turned slowly to face him. He did not move. Instead, he listened. The wind swirled into words. A voice not singular, but braided. You have gathered the clouds. You have sung their weight. You have remembered what was not yours to forget. Tala lowered his eyes. He felt humbled, carried. He stepped closer to the spindle, and as he did, one feather floated toward him, white, simple, but its shaft glowed faintly with a memory he did not yet know. The voice whispered again, "This is the feather of echoes. With it you will write not with ink, but with air." Tala reached out, and the feather rested gently in his palm. The moment it touched him, a pulse of light spread outward. The dome dissolved into mist, the spindle stopped turning, and the pedestal sank slowly into the earth, leaving nothing behind but silence. But not empty silence. Prepared silence. Tala looked upward. The sky above the hollow was now clear, a soft blue veined with streaks of rose and lavender. And there, far in the distance, a bridge of woven light began to form. No hand had crafted it. No foot had yet crossed it. But it waited. Gently, Tala tucked the feather into the sash. The wind thawed around him, once more brushing his cheek, and then fell still. The next path was ready. He stepped forward, and the sky leaned closer. The bridge shimmered across the open sky-woven light, arching softly from one unseen height to another. It wasn't high above the mountain. It was the mountain folded into sky, stretched thin like a lullaby's final note. Tala stepped onto it. The moment his foot touched the surface, the bridge responded. It hummed. A tone not sharp, not loud. It was the same note his grandmother once sang while patting rice into shape. He took another step, a new tone. Higher, softer like dew striking bamboo, each footfall became part of a song. One he didn't know, yet somehow remembered. He looked back. The mountain had vanished into cloud. There was no more behind. Only forward. Each span of the bridge was translucent, almost fluid, yet strong beneath his feet. Below, there was no sky. Just gentle movement threads of wind, slow swimming lanterns, tiny lights blinking in and out of vision. Not stars, memories. Tala paused, listening. One light below flickered steadily, then rose. It floated to his shoulder and pulsed once before revealing itself, a folded slip of silk. He unfolded it carefully. Inside, a single line stitched in thread that shimmered gold. To listen is to return. He pressed it to his chest, and as he did, the bridge beneath him sang again. Clearer now, he understood. Each person who crossed this place left a note behind, not a footprint, not a shadow, but a sound. The bridge was made of remembrance, woven from the resonance of stories no longer spoken aloud. Tala walked on, and as he moved, the hum beneath him became layered. He heard laughter, rain, a flute played over a child's dream, and then his own voice, soft, distant, from days he didn't remember, reciting an old tale about a deer that danced with thunder. He stopped walking. The sound faded. He took another step, and the sound returned. He was part of it now. Ahead, the bridge arched upward one last time, leading to a great gate. It wasn't a gate of wood or stone. It was made of braided wind and glowing script. The language danced curved and shifting, but it welcomed, not warned. Tala reached it, and the script stilled. Only those who carry what cannot be held may enter. He looked down at his hands, empty, but his sash glowed faintly, and the feather tucked beside his heart pulsed once. He stepped through. The gate dissolved around him, and on the other side, a field of mirrors, floating, turning, each one holding a sky that hadn't yet been born. The field stretched in all directions, but there was no soil, no grass. Only sky, and floating within it, like petals drifting on a still pond, were mirrors. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Each one different in size and shape. Some were framed with ribbons of brass, others rimmed with carved wood or woven reeds, and some were nothing more than delicate ripples in the air, visible only when you breathed near them. Tala stepped forward. The moment his foot passed the threshold, the mirrors stirred, not with wind, but with recognition. One floated closer. He looked into it and gasped softly. It did not show his face. It showed a moment from years ago when he stood beneath a coconut tree, too young to understand sorrow, watching the sky with silent hope after hearing his father's voice crack for the first time. The mirror shimmered and drifted past him, spinning slowly. Another came. This one revealed him kneeling beside the riverbank, placing a folded paper boat into the current, a wish he'd long forgotten until now. Each mirror was a memory, not just of action, but of feeling. Not all were sorrowful, some were gentle joys. Like the first time he traced stars in the sand, the way the night air felt after singing with cousins by firelight. Tala walked slowly, hands open at his sides, eyes soft and quiet. The mirrors responded. One pulsed bright and drifted toward him. This one was larger. He paused. Inside the glass, he saw himself standing on the summit of empty Pulag, alone, cloaked in clouds. The sash glowing at his shoulders, the spindle of wind in his hand, and a trail of lanterns behind him. He looked older, not aged, just known. The mirror faded, and a voice echoed low and kind. These are the skies that never were and still might be. Not prophecy, not destiny, but invitations. Tala turned to see the field shifting now. The mirrors began to swirl in a soft spiral, moving not chaotically, but in song. At the spiral's center, one mirror hung still, oval, plain, and framed. It glowed gently, but did not approach him. The field slowed, inviting him closer. Tala obeyed. When he reached it, the surface changed. It showed not one image, but many. Not as a collage, but as a flow of memory, like rain trailing down glass. Moments he had never lived, but could. Him cradling a small child beneath a moonlit arch of fireflies. Him planting herbs on a window ledge as a gentle old woman hummed beside him. Him writing, stitching, teaching, waking from dreams with the sound of the mountains still in his chest. The mirror pulsed, then released a breath of mist. A path opened forward, and the mirrors whispered together, their reflections blending into the fog like stories, tucking themselves into silence. Tala walked on, and the sky grew still. Beyond the mist, the air took on a weight that was not heavy, only aware. It wrapped around Tala like a blanket of thought, thick with meaning but free of pressure. He stepped into a space that wasn't a room, but felt like one. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor he could name. Just a soft grayness, pillowed and endless, gently pressing inward like fog curled around a dream. Yet he stood. He knew he stood. The sash around his shoulders vibrated faintly. The feather near his heart was warm, and something else was waiting. He heard no footsteps, no sound. But he was not alone. Figures appeared not fully formed, but outlined. Made of threadlight and memory, they formed a soft ring around him. 20, maybe more. each one wearing a version of the sash he bore, some thicker, some faded, some humming softly. Tala bowed his head, and they bowed in return. A voice soft as clouded breath rose in the space. Every shepherd must enter the room with no corners to learn the shape of stillness. One of the figures stepped forward. They held out both hands, and between them spun a small orb. Inside it, a miniature cloud, slowly turning. The figure offered it to him. Tala took it with both palms. It was weightless. Yet as he held it, a sound filled the space, subtle, like fingertips brushing thread. The orb pulsed. The cloud within shifted into a memory. Himself sitting quietly beneath a mango tree, writing lines of poetry on a rice sack, a single tear on his cheek. No sadness, just release. The figures began to hum, not in unison, but in harmony. Each sound entered the room with care, layering one upon another like mist folding over mountains. And then Tala understood. This wasn't a test. It wasn't a lesson. It was a welcome. Each of these shepherds had once stood as he did now, cloaked in breath and silence, carrying stories that had no name. He clutched the orb closer, and the cloud inside it unraveled, forming a spiral that hovered before his face. Words appeared, glowing, winding gently. The shepherd does not lead. The shepherd listens. To every stone, every wind, every silence. Tala's chest rose slowly, then fell, and when he looked up, the figures had stepped back, and a new passage had formed. Not a door, just an opening. Bathed in soft amber light, he placed the orb against his heart. It dissolved like dew on warm skin, and the sash at his shoulders shimmered with quiet pride. He turned and stepped into the light. The light wrapped around Tala as he stepped forward, not bright, not blinding, just warm, the kind of light you might find under woven eaves at dusk, where laughter mingles with cooking smoke and children press their noses to firefly jars. When it faded, he stood not on stone or mist or sky, but earth, soft, rich, cradled in moss and fallen leaves. Before him, nestled between the folds of empty Pulag's higher peaks, was a village, tiny thatched rooftops, curved walkways of pebble and worn wood. Lanterns flickered at every doorway, though no flame burned inside them. Instead, each one pulsed with a soft hum, music. The entire village was asleep, but not in stillness, in song. He stepped onto the first path, and beneath his feet, the stones rang faint tones, just as they had at the bell garden, but gentler now, like lullabies folded into cobblestones. The homes he passed were quiet, but peaceful. He peered through an open doorway. Inside, a woman sat in slumber, upright in her chair, a spindle in one hand and a half-finished thread in the other. Her chest rose slowly. She was not frozen. She was resting, waiting, and in her dreams, Tala heard it. He will come with cloud upon his back and rain in his hands. He will sing the sky open. He stepped back, awed. Every villager he passed was the same, curled in chairs, bent over tools, cradled in one another's arms, still but alive, dreaming the same dream. Tala whispered aloud, as if not to wake them, but to acknowledge them. You've been waiting. The village answered with the softest of breezes, one that rustled no leaves, but set every lantern to glowing a little brighter. He followed the hum to the center of the village. There, in a quiet square marked by stones shaped like sleeping birds, stood a small platform, and on it, a drum, carved of hollowed tree and stretched cloud skin. One simple mallet lay across it. No guard, no warning, just invitation. Tala climbed the steps, looked around one last time, and struck the drum once. The sound that rang out did not echo. It rippled. Lanterns blinked, then pulsed in rhythm. The hum became a melody, not loud, not fast. Just home, and all around him, the villagers stirred, eyes still closed, hands still gentle, but they began to hum in return, each one a harmony centuries in the making. Tala stepped down from the drum. The sash around him glowed, and from the path behind the square another light appeared. A child, the same girl, now awake, smiling, holding a small pouch. She approached and whispered, "This was always yours." He opened it and sighed. Seeds, round, luminous, warm. The kind of seeds that grow only when planted in dream soil and watered with story. She pointed to the far path. "The final passage." He nodded and walked on. The path narrowed as Tala walked, its edges lined not with stone or vine, but with feathers. Each one fluttered in stillness, resting upright in the earth like soft-stemmed flowers, their barbs gently glowing with moonlight that hadn't yet fallen. The seeds in his pouch warmed with every step. Ahead, the trail opened once more into a clearing he did not recognize, and yet he knew it. A circle of earth surrounded by clouds that drifted like petals. At its center, a single tree stump, flat, worn, waiting. No trees grew nearby, no birds called above. Only silence, so rich and layered, it felt like a symphony waiting to begin. Tala approached the stump and sat before it. The girl stood beside him again, quiet. In the hush she spoke. "This is the place where the first shepherd placed the first seed, and the mountain grew its heart around it." He looked down at his pouch. The seeds shimmered faintly, each one a different shade of memory. One pulsed with laughter, another with grief. One hummed the scent of rain on tin. He reached in and removed one. It floated just above his palm. He pressed it gently into the earth beside the stump. The moment it touched soil, the ground sighed, not loudly. Just enough, the clouds leaned in, and a single sprout curled upward, thin, green, soft. He planted another and another. Each one brought a sprout, not in rows, but in moments. Some bloomed instantly, tiny blossoms shaped like raindrops or tiny lanterns. Others remained curled, dreaming their shape. The girl knelt beside him and pressed her hand to the earth. Where her fingers touched, the stump glowed. Then soft roots emerged from the stump, weaving themselves around each sprout, binding them, not tightly, lovingly. A quiet voice, like aged wind, spoke from beneath the soil. The shepherd does not guard the sky. He reminds it how to grow. The sprouts shimmered together. And for the first time, Tala felt the mountain's breath, not in wind or tremble, but in gratitude. He looked upward. The sky above had parted. The clouds no longer hung. They danced. A gentle swirl of silver and rose, woven through with faint threads of melody. Tala stood. The girl beside him now looked different. Older, not aged, just complete. She smiled. And behind her, figures emerged one by one wearing cloaks of mist and memory, each bearing a different song stitched into their hems. The shepherds, returning together. The garden had grown, not into trees or rivers, but into remembrance. And Tala knew this was not the end. This was the planting of a beginning that others would one day walk. He turned to the final path. A soft arc of clouds lit from within. It did not lead away. It led deeper. He walked it, slowly, like a lullaby heading home. As Tala walked deeper, the clouds shifted around him like curtains parting for a long-awaited guest. But there was no stage. No throne, no fire, only a vast chamber of air and hush. It was as if the mountain had opened its lungs and invited him inside. The archive was not a building. It was a space folded into time made of air pressed into memory. He stood on a floor of woven wind. Beneath it, faint echoes stirred, like voices once whispered into cupped palms and held there. Safe. Shelves appeared, not wood, not stone, each one shaped from delicate wire and drift leaf. And upon them, breaths, not scrolls, not books, but tiny bubbles of light. Each pulse shimmered with a faint sound, a sigh, a laugh, A weeping breath held too long. A final exhale turned soft with peace. Tala walked slowly between the shelves, and with each step, his sash whispered in rhythm with the voices. The feather near his heart fluttered. He reached out to one of the breath spheres. Touched it, it sang, not a song he knew, but one he understood. A melody carried across generations. A woman whispering a bedtime tale to her son the night before his journey to a far island. Her words wrapped in jasmine and trembling hope. Tala stepped back, breath caught. The archive didn't just store these breaths, it honored them. A voice rose from the dome above, as if spoken by the wind that had never left. Every cloud knows where it came from, but only the shepherd remembers why. The shelves shifted gently, revealing a staircase spiraling, not downward or upward, but inward, to a quiet heart. Tala descended. Each step he took birthed a small wisp of mist behind him. And as he walked, the mist trailed behind in soft ribbon-shaped moments from his journey, the lantern, the drum, the rain garden, the village of song. They followed, not to weigh him down, but to bear witness. At the base of the stair, a chamber awaited, circular, still, echoless. At its center, a pedestal. Upon it, a bowl, empty. The wind spoke once more. The final offering is your breath. Tala stood before the bowl, and slowly he exhaled. One long, unbroken breath, and from it rose a shimmer, a small spiral of light and mist. It hovered above the bowl, then settled, and pulsed once, now full, now remembered, now part of the archive. Tala bowed, and the chamber brightened not with light, but with presence. The breath of every shepherd before him stirred in a single tender harmony. He turned to leave, but the path was gone. In its place, the mountain, open, listening. He was no longer seeking. He was home. The path ahead was no longer marked by light or mist. It was made only by intention. Tala walked slowly, guided now by something quieter than vision, an inner stillness that listened before each step. He emerged onto a quiet slope of the mountain where the winds had hushed entirely. Before him lay a small clearing, no more than 10 paces wide. At its center, balanced atop a shallow pool of sky-reflecting water, floated a stone, rounded, flat, unmoving. A stone that should not float, and yet it did. Upon its surface, a single object rested, a bell. The owl bell, carved from moonstone, flecked with deep indigo. Its rim etched with tiny feathers curling inward. It did not chime. It waited. Tala stepped to the edge of the pool. His reflection looked back, not only his face now, but every version of himself stitched across the journey. The boy with questions, the weaver of stories, the listener of clouds, the bearer of forgotten lullabies. He breathed, and the bell pulsed faintly in response. The mountain whispered low, from somewhere behind the air, the bell does not call you home. It reminds the world that you never left. Tala stepped into the water. There was no splash, only warmth, as if walking through folded breath. With each step, the sash around his shoulders shimmered with every moment he had carried. The lantern girl's smile, the threads of the rain garden, the memory mirrors and wind sculptures, the seeds planted in dreaming soil. He reached the stone and set. It did not sink. It held him softly, as if remembering how. He reached out and placed both hands on the bell. It was cool, silent. Then he breathed into it. Not a blow, not a chant, just a breath offered. The bell did not ring. It opened, soundless, but felt through the ribs like a lullaby pressed against the chest. The world around him shifted, not outward, but inward. Suddenly, he could feel every breeze along the mountain spine, hear every seed stream beneath the soil, see every cloud that passed above, remembering its shape from lifetimes ago. The mountain had become part of him, or perhaps he had always been part of it. He sat quietly, letting the knowing settle like dusk. The bell dimmed, its purpose met, and gently the stone beneath him began to drift toward the shore once more, not floating, but gliding along memory. When it touched earth, the path ahead opened one last time. No bridges, no gates, just trees, mist, and starlight. He rose and walked, not to arrive, but to continue. The forest that greeted Tala was quiet but alive, not with birdsong or wind, but with breath. Each tree stood like a pillar in a great green temple. Their leaves shimmered faintly, catching light from no visible source, as if remembering the moon, even in its absence. The path beneath him was soft woven of moss and worn root, as if hundreds of quiet feet had once followed this way before choosing to vanish. Tala's own steps left no mark. He walked for a time without time. And then he reached a clearing where the trees opened their arms. Above him stretched the sky, not vast, not distant, but close, like a warm shawl draped just above his shoulders, and on its fabric threads of mist shaped into words. His name, not just Tala, but all the names he had ever been called. Soft ones from childhood, sacred ones whispered by elders, hidden ones known only to himself, shaped from longing and memory. The sky shimmered with them all. He looked up, breath caught in wonder, and the names began to move, not vanish, not scatter, but merge into a shape, a sigil of cloudlight simple, glowing, familiar, the same one that had once appeared on his sash so many steps ago. The mountain had not forgotten, the sky had learned him. A voice spoke, this time not from wind or mist, but from within him. You walked with silence, you sang with memory. You planted what could not be seen. Now carry the sky within you. Above, the stars began to blink into being. Each one pulsed once, then fell slowly like soft snow. Not toward earth, but toward him. They did not strike. They entered, each one dissolving into his skin, his breath, his chest. He felt no fear, only warmth, and a stillness that carried not emptiness, but completion. Tala looked down. The sash had become translucent, woven entirely of light now. The feather on his chest no longer pulsed. It sang, a melody of all he had witnessed, all he had carried, all he would pass on. The girl appeared once more at the edge of the clearing, no longer small. She was tall now, her eyes steady, soft. She held no object, no lantern, no pouch, only a smile that said, "It is time." She nodded once, Tala did too, and stepped into the very center of the clearing. The trees bowed. The sky folded around him like the closing of a story told only in dreams. Tala stood in the center of the clearing. The trees no longer swayed. The stars had all descended, and the sky had drawn near enough to touch, but he did not reach upward. He simply listened. For what, he wasn't certain. But the listening itself felt sacred. A slow hush pressed outward from his chest. Not a sound, not even breath, but something deeper, stillness that sang. The feather at his heart unfolded. No longer small or simple, it became a crest of glowing strands like woven dawn. The sash shimmered into threads of light, each trailing outward and upward, attaching to nothing, and yet becoming everything. And then a wind rose, not sudden, not loud, just true. It curled around him like an old friend, wrapping his shoulders and neck, lifting his hair. And softly it lifted him too, not into the air, but into presence. Tala's feet no longer touched earth, yet he did not fly. He floated not as a body, but as a story, as a cloud. He rose, higher than trees, higher than peaks. And as he ascended, the mountain whispered one last time, "You are not leaving. You are becoming." From far below, the seeds he planted stirred. One by one, their blossoms opened, some into petals, some into flame, some into small bells that rang only when no one was watching. And above where Tala now hovered, part wind, part thought, his voice moved once more. Not in words, but in invitation, the sky shimmered. Clouds shifted into stories. Children across the world would dream of them, some in villages, some in cities, some in quiet corners between homes where lanterns had not yet been lit. They would whisper the tale of the boy who walked the sky, the shepherd who planted memory, the cloud who sang back the silence. Tala's shape faded into mist. His song lingered long after, a lullaby you might forget by morning, but carry in your bones forever. And if you ever walk alone one dusk along a high path and feel a breeze that carries no chill, only calm, listen closely, you may just hear the hum of the cloud shepherd calling you home.